we're not well as human beings. We've come up in dysfunction, dysfunctional homes, dysfunctional neighborhoods, dysfunctional cities, dysfunctional nations, dysfunctional planet. And even as an individual, we have our own little quirks even outside of all of that. So and what we try to do then is we recognize that we're not whole. We feel like we're not whole. We walk around unfulfilled. Why are we unfulfilled? Because we've been functioning in dysfunction. So we are unfulfilled in a sense because there's stuff that we're not seeing, stuff that we're missing, things that we're taking as absolutely natural about our lives, but there are things that are actually sabotaging the things we put our hands to do, and particularly relationships. Okay, relationships don't seem to last. Marriages last. 55% of marriages end in divorce. And before that, how many relationships do individuals have that don't last all the way up to the marriage? And if you ask each one of them, well, she did this, she did that, or if you ask her, he did this and he did that, they're both blaming the other. Why? Because everybody feels they're okay. But the reality is, what I'm sharing is we're not okay. None of us are okay. We have issues, we have ills that need to be dealt with. And until we deal with these ills, we're not really going to be good for anybody. And what happens is the satisfaction or the completion that we think that we're going to be attaining when we get married is the thing that's going to satisfy us, and it hardly does. And it's so very difficult. It's difficult because the way we function, and it seems to be the natural way to function, is you meet somebody, and before long you become intimate with that individual. And then your motivation is the reality of red flags is skewed because now you're connected, but you're not married. So that gives you even an added enthusiasm, even in the spite of things that might seem negative, to continue on because you're already connected intimately, and that's a psychological connection, even though it's physical. And so now you're dating each other, and you're having issues because of the issues, but you're still hanging in there because you're connected now. And eventually, maybe you pop up, you're going to get married one day, and maybe before you get married, you have a baby or two. Then you're forever connected, and then you're not only connected, but you're trapped. Because now you're really beginning to see the negatives. So you really begin to see this individual for who they are, but because of now the trap is there, it begins to be more noticeable to you and more unbearable, and your issues to them as well. But now there's a baby involved, maybe two. That's a connection for the next 20 years. And so we move on, and sometimes we just move on away from that individual, and now we got another situation with a family of kids over here, and now I'm over here creating another couple of kids, or another family, another relationship. Or maybe we get married. Simply because that's the thing we're supposed to do since we have the kids, but the situations are still there. Situations haven't been resolved. And we still have issues, terrible issues, and that's why the divorce rate is so high. So I'm suggesting is that it's very important then for us to be well. Not to be looking at what's wrong with them, but to be looking at what's wrong with me. And after you've become intimate, it's like almost impossible before the commitment has just gone too great, and finally there's a breakup, or even worse, a marriage with these issues unresolved. So I mean, I don't even, it's kind of hard to tell even if there is a real answer, because we just do everything wrong. We're having unprotected sex. So then we have a baby born, and that complicates the matter, makes it almost impossible for the situation to be fixed, okay? And one of the issues I believe we have, the most profound issue, is believing that my needs need to be met. Both individuals think their own personal needs need to be met. And usually if just one of the folks' needs are being met, the other one's miserable. So one feels great, the other feels miserable. It's not going to work, man. We have to come to the point to recognize that there's a difference between my needs and my wants. And your wants are not paramount if you want the relationship to work. But too often the wants are very important. We don't even know the difference between our wants and our needs. Neither does the spouse. And so there's the conflict, there's the rub. And eventually the life is going to be miserable. And most of the time those situations just don't last. That's why the divorce rate is higher than the folks that stay together. And that's why even before marriage, the number of relationships people have that don't work. That's why most relationships, including marriage, don't work, is because people are feeling that their own needs are not being met, when in fact their own wants are not being met. So you find a man that wants his meals every day prepared by his wife. Come on, that might be the way it was in his mom and daddy's house. That may not be what this spouse is used to, okay? She may be wanting him to be home every day, all day, you know. That's not what he's used to. You know, so you just have a whole bunch of situations, and I'm just suggesting that our own individual issues have to be dealt with. I think the problem is that we are so quick to point out the issues in our mate's life, whether it's just a relationship or whether it's a marriage relationship. You're pointing our finger at their issues, but we're not doing anything about our own, and they're doing the same thing with us, and so here we are at this stalemate. But we have to come, and again, my wife and I, we've been married for like 28 years, and we've had problems like other people, arguments and debates and, you know, all that stuff. But we stood the test of time, 28 years. You have to come to a point where what you want is less important than the goal. And if two people can do that, if two people can say, hey, you know, my wants are not that important. I do have needs now. I do need to eat. You know, I do need to sleep. We have our needs. But our wants are on the table. And for me, I know I don't have that many wants. And because they're not that important. I think when I look at marriage, I don't see it like many people see marriage, and I think my wife is the same way. What is the purpose of marriage? You know, maybe that's a question we have to ask ourselves. Is it to be happy? Is it to have kids? Is it to have companionship, or to have projects that you can work on or create, you know, wealth together? You know, you have to determine, you know, what is the purpose? What is my purpose? And then make sure, you know, your prospective relationship or mate, it's their purpose as well. And certainly do not have unprotected sex while you're trying to come to this conclusion, because when a baby is born, none of that even matters anymore. And if you could just hold off totally on intimacy, and I know that's totally unrealistic for today. But when you look at the numbers, something has to be done. There's something that we're doing wrong. So what we think is normal isn't normal. What we think is necessary isn't necessary, and we're just digging ourselves into that old hole again. The situation doesn't look good for marriages in this nation today. And then you go to other nations. Well, look, they have arranged marriages over here in this nation, or in this country over here. They have young child brides or whatever. You know, but all these situations are not satisfying. Maybe the one, but not the other, and hardly ever the two at all. We have to be well in and of ourselves. And to me, I believe that the goal for me and for what should be is to be happy. But I think then what needs to be determined is what it is we're looking at to make us happy, okay? And for me then, for a relationship to be happy, there has to be a purpose. There has to be something that these two individuals can be working together on for, hand in hand, side by side. Kids are a perfect thing for the perfect example Because that is going to take you 18 to 20 years, but you're better off if you do that after you're married. But don't have those kids. Don't get married until you're ready. Okay? Nothing worse, I think, bringing kids into an environment where there's no happiness, where there's no love, where there's no fondness of each other. You know, I was at Panera Bread about maybe 15 years ago. I remember I was studying for my associate degree. And it was in the afternoon or early afternoon, or maybe a late morning in Panera Bread. And when I got in there was this old couple who looked like they were in their 80s or something. And they were sitting at a table, and they weren't even looking at each other. The man, he was reading a book, and his wife, she was doing some kind of crossword puzzle or some kind of puzzle in the book. And at first when I saw them, I thought, man, I sure would hate to turn out like that one day. But then even recently, even after being married now for so many years, I began to understand they had figured it out. They didn't have to entertain each other. None of them had to juggle or ride a unicycle around to keep the other one in good spirits. That they knew how to satisfy themselves. He liked a good book, and she liked a crossword puzzle. She didn't have to read his book, and he didn't have to do her crossword puzzle. And so what I assumed then, maybe they've been married like 45 or 50 years, and what they have is they have a lifelong friend. They have somebody in their life that knows them better than anybody else. They have somebody that they're growing old and that they grow old with. And if you get sickly or need some help, they have somebody to care for them. That's the ultimate. So our function, even from a biblical perspective, is to be fruitful and multiply, to have children, okay? And then after that 20 years passes by, then you're older and maybe you have more kids. Who knows? But there comes a point where you realize that the most important part of a marriage is this friend that you have for life that understands you better than anyone else on the planet and will be there for you forever. That's the key. See, we're looking at all these other little things. I'm not happy, I'm not happy. And I was speaking to someone the other day. Now you're going to find this maybe a bit, you might not buy this, but I've been married over 28 years now. But when you get married, as a man, you don't have any more friends that are girls. You might have work people that you speak with, but after work hours, there's nothing. And the same with the woman. The guy friends, they're gone. It's just your husband and it's just your wife. And you take care of your work, you make the money, you do all the things you need to do, but when that's done, you come home. You don't go out with the guys, you don't go out with the girls. I'm just telling you from somebody who's in a marriage that works. You don't have conversations on the phone if you're a wife with your guy friends, or conversations on the phone if you're a guy with your girlfriends. You don't meet them somewhere to go eat and talk and any of that stuff. That's over. And really friends. Man, I have one good friend, and he's always been my friend. Since the 8th grade, my best friend. We practiced karate together. We would go out places together before we were married. All that stuff. Went in the military together. I haven't seen him in a couple of years. He's still my best friend in my heart. But this is my family. This was raising my daughter was 24/7. I had to always be there and be sober. Don't be drinking. You don't drink alcohol. Don't smoke weed. You know, be there 24/7. I know this. Well, my daughter's in college now, but if she were to wake up at 2:30 in the morning and have an issue she wanted to talk to me about, or 11 o'clock at night, or 4 o'clock in the morning, or any time of day, I'm there, I'm sober, I'm available, because she is my purpose. My wife and I both. She's our purpose. And so there's no time to be out with the friends, with the buddies doing this. If I'm not at work, or at the grocery store, or getting gas, I'm at home. And so and so that right there that's when you delineate the difference between your wants and your needs. And besides that, when you're going out, there are situations out there that are temptations that you just 100% absolve yourself from. You don't even have to be faced with them. Man, you go out to a club with the guys and I'm going to be drinking. You know, some women are going to be checking you out. And if you're a woman and you're at a club with your girlfriends and you're drinking, there's some men that are going to be checking you out. Why are you in an environment picking up on, I want to say, spirits like that or stuff like that? Don't do that. My mother, who was like 97 when she passed, she was wise, and she would say, you know, temptation never takes a vacation. It doesn't. So these are some of the issues as well. Man, it's like when a single man goes out to a club without his wife, or I mean, not a single man, when a married man goes out to a club without his wife, he's like a magnet for women. And if the women know he's married, he's even more attractive to many of them. And now, so you take a man then that is true to his wife, but maybe they've been having a hard time for the past week. They've been arguing something that's been seemingly unresolvable and irritated, and he's out in the club with his buddies and having a couple drinks, and then some cute woman comes up and starts talking to him, and he's got the aggravation at home. This woman out here is agreeing with everything that he says, and she looks good too. At least that's what the alcohol has convinced him. That's that temptation, man. And it's going to be the same for the woman. You're in her, man, she's mad at her husband, and she just went out with the girlfriends to have a drink, and some guys, you know, checking her out. Of course they are. Starts talking to her innocently at first, and then before she knows it. I'm telling you, you have to avoid places like that. I think the Bible says something about to even avoid the appearance of evil, you know, and to like run from things like that, you know. That's the reason. So when you just cut yourself off in situations like that, you got nothing to worry about. Not those type things to worry about. For real. I know there are people at work, I guess they call them work wives or work husbands, and I see guys at work that are hugging women at work, and these are married guys. And then my feeling is, would he be doing that if his wife was there in front of his wife? No. Then what he's doing right now is wrong, and he knows it. And so right then, in your own mind, you're doing something that you know your wife wouldn't approve of. You're holding and squeezing on to a woman right here. So you're creating a division in your mind that your wife isn't even aware of. And if you're somebody's wife, and you're in a work environment and you're hugging somebody else, some other man, would you do that in front of your husband? Then if not, you're creating a divide between you and your husband. These are the wedges. These are like the little foxes, you know, that spoil the grapes or the roots or whatever. No, man. So you have to recognize that you are not more important than your spouse is, whichever one you are. And so you don't do anything that would belittle your spouse just because they're not there. Okay? You know what I do? I do have this bad habit now of listening every day to at least 1 or 2 episodes of like 48 Hours or true crime or something. And it always amazes me how they open up, a husband or the wife is calling 911 and saying, my husband or my wife just shot herself, or she just fell down the stairs, or somebody stepped out of the bushes and shot him and ran away. All these kind of things, man. And it's almost like 100% of the time, it's the spouse. Why is that? Sometimes they have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Sometimes it's the insurance money they're looking at. Whatever it is, in order for one human being to take the life of another human being, they must see themselves as more important than that other human being. And nobody's more important than anyone else. Those are certain crimes, you know, back in the day, you know, when I was like an atheist and I was just Marty and I was just doing the things I want to be doing. I had a rule that I could do anything that I wanted to do as long as I wasn't harming someone else. And now that I'm not Marty anymore, that I'm Martin, I'm still that way in a sense. It's that there is no one that's more important than anyone else. So you don't have the right, simply for your own convenience or for your own desires or for your own comfort, to harm someone else. I never believe. That's why killing is so abhorrent to me. Because it's an individual that thinks they're more important than the life of this individual they took just for their own comfort. And usually when you see murders like that, when you see people who've murdered someone else, it's usually the person who is less than the person that they killed. It's a shame. Don't kill. Never kill. Don't steal. Don't take something that somebody else worked for or earned. Same thing. You're not more important to where you could take what they created. Don't lie. Oh, these are like the first part of the 10 Commandments. You know what I'm saying? Don't want what somebody else has. Don't take what somebody else has. Don't kill. Don't lie. Don't steal. All that kind of stuff, man. And I'm saying it's a human nature. Because no one would kill. No one would steal. No one would lie about someone else. No one would want someone else has unless they thought that person was beneath them. Okay? That's an inferior way of thinking. And to take that type attitude into a marriage is a recipe for disaster. That's like the whole Ike and Tina Turner thing. Why does man think it's okay to beat on this woman? Who was he as a human being that he could do something like that? And what you have usually is an individual that is dealing with issues that they were raised in, the environments that they came up in, that influence in such a way that either this is the way I'm supposed to act, or this is the way I'm striking out at, the issues that I had to endure when I was younger. And what I'm suggesting is do yourself a favor and do that potential relationship or spouse a favor. Get mental help. Go to therapy. Get cured before you infect someone else with your mental issues. That's what we have going on in these marriages today, man. It's almost a dismal situation because most people lie. Most people will manipulate simply to achieve, even to meet somebody and to date someone. And the lies that we tell, those right there are red flags. This is an individual willing to say or do anything just to satisfy himself. And it might seem innocent and cute at first, but what that actually is an individual that will deceive a person, a relationship, or a spouse simply for their own good. And eventually, promiscuity. God, that woman. Oh no, I haven't seen and all that kind of stuff, man, is based on an individual either has a low self-esteem of themselves, and so they're trying to validate themselves by doing things they shouldn't, or the individual is delusional in believing they are something greater than they're not, probably stemming from an early experience as well. So I'm just saying is if you really want to have a good relationship, if you recognize you have to be well yourself. And what I would suggest is getting well yourself before you even meet anyone. It's just not fair. Because right now it's a dismal situation for the prospects of marriage. Because we're all kind of messed up. But you have to be on a path of self-improvement. Honestly. Without ego. Without inferiority. These are two opposites. Without anything negative, but always be on a path trying to improve yourself and recognizing that you're no better than anyone. Man, that's hard, isn't it? I think it's kind of like for me, when I went from being an atheist to that one night when I couldn't sleep and I realized that there was God, okay? And I said, I'm going to follow you, but I'm going to find out who you really are, okay? And those weren't idle words. Because I'm going to tell you what, when you make a proclamation like that, you think you're going to find out who God really is? In that journey, you're going to find out who you really are, okay? And so finding out, so my journey was to discover who God was. Okay, I'm serving you, but I'm going to walk with my eyes open and begin to learn. And so now I was raised in a church. So I have all these beliefs and all these understandings that this particular denomination, this particular part of the religion taught. This is what I believe, because that's what I was raised with. But as I begin to walk with my eyes open, I allowed myself to be challenged. If this didn't make sense, I'm challenging it. And so I had to come to the point to say, look, this is where I'm starting. But whatever I believe is probably wrong. And I'm not going to be ashamed to change it. And so what I'm suggesting today is you look at that in your life as a human being. And preferably before you meet anybody, when you're single. And just determine that whatever I believe, whatever I think is probably wrong. And then walk this life with your eyes open, and you'll begin to discover truths that you would never have come upon had you not given yourself away. All of your beliefs, all of your thoughts, all the things you thought you knew were true. That's when you begin to learn some stuff about yourself. That's when you begin to realize and see some of the dysfunction even in the family that you came up in. Because you've decided that you want to be whole. See, we do things like we exercise. Like I try to exercise every day. We eat right. I try to eat right every day. I do all these things, but the physical body is so important. But the internal part of it, often as we're building up the outside, is kind of jacked up. What we believed, what we deduce by the things that we see, by the experiences that we have. This is why our likes, our hates, our loves, our dislikes, all these things that we believe is a part of ourselves is what we have gotten from outside of ourselves. And it's okay if it's not harmful to ourselves and to other people, but when it's dysfunction, man, that's a recipe for disaster. Because we end up getting in these relationships, and we talk about the 45% of the marriages stay together, but those 55% that split, most of them have kids. And this is what the kids have experienced. This is what they probably experienced when they were kids. So we're breeding and breeding generations and generations of dysfunction, and that's who I'm speaking to right now. Dysfunction. I was dysfunction too. I was married first once before, clueless. Nothing worse than two clueless people. But it's time. It's time to reevaluate ourselves if we want to be, because marriage is good. Only when you're looking at it in the proper perspective. Nobody wants to be old alone. Nobody wants to be old without a real friend. Nobody wants to be old without someone to take care of them. And no one wants really to be old and not have kids that have come from them. And I know a lot of people haven't or maybe couldn't, but that was not the way it's meant to be. There was a process in life, and when you get it together, when you get yourself together first, okay, then you meet someone. And you find someone of comparable value systems that you have, that are in the same place you are, and you're growing together positively. You have children. Those kids will grow up in a positive environment, and they will be something special. And then their kids, when they meet someone, will grow up in a positive environment. They will be something special. And it is very, very possible to weed that dysfunction out of your family line through you. But you've got to recognize. You've got to recognize you are not more important than your spouse. You've got to recognize that your comfort does not validate their discomfort. That you two are equal. You've got a lot of male podcasts out there that are saying otherwise, that women are on this level, men are on that level, and they're wrong. You've got a lot of female podcasts, probably, but I haven't listened to them, on the other side as well. They're wrong. You are two equal people, different attributes. I mean, and that's it. Strengths and weaknesses. So I'm not saying weaknesses are something that you could rid yourself of, but to recognize that we each have strengths and we each have weaknesses. And so even in a relationship, so ending the dysfunction doesn't mean you have no more weaknesses. I think ending the dysfunction in you is recognizing you have weaknesses, and in all honesty then, allowing or embracing the weaknesses of your spouse as just as valid as yours. And so the key then is not to criticize or condemn the weaknesses of your spouse, or them you. But you are the strength where they are weak, and they are the strength where we are weak. And we make and there was a solid there, okay? So it's not that we're supposed to be satisfying the emptiness that an individual has, no. But you sure can shore up their weaknesses by exhibiting your strength where they're weak and allowing them to exhibit their strength when you're weak. But when you're denying your own weakness and criticizing theirs, that's your dysfunction. And it's not going to work. Yeah, now I'm not saying they won't stay with you. They might, in misery. But is that really what you want? I don't think so. The key is, I think, that old couple sitting in Panera that day, he was reading his book, she was doing her crossword puzzles, but they were friends for life that totally understood each other. I think that's what we're looking for. That's the purpose of marriage. We'll get back. We'll talk about more. I think we're going to stay on this topic maybe for, I don't know, the rest of the year possibly, and see how this thing goes. But again, go to my website, my book, When Two Become One. I've taken each chapter and put them in on that webpage as a blog, so you don't have to go to Amazon to buy my book. Let's see here. What is it anyway? When Two Become One. This is my book, but the chapters are free on my website. And Another Perspective, martinjarvis.com. Go to the blogs. You'll see them there. There are other blogs too, so I have them laid out which blogs apply to the book. Okay? Well, anyway, until next time, walk with your eyes open. Challenge yourself. Become better inside and out. You take care. Bye.